I am now going to turn it over to Curator Graves for the Finance Committee meeting.
All right, thank you, Chair Williams. We're going to be high energy in the Finance Committee, Ryan, and we're going to move with all due haste. We're moving the program around just a little bit. We're going to start out, we have 4 information items today, and we have 3 action items. And we're starting out with the Center for Energy Innovation. We're going to hear about the Center of Energy Innovation. Presenters are Praveen Adara, Chair of Civil and Environmental Engineering, Rosanna Zia, Dean of Engineering, Cooper Drury, Dean of Arts and Sciences.
Good afternoon again. I'm thrilled to share our vision for the Center for Energy Innovation with you this afternoon. I'll be joined with 2 of my colleagues, Cooper Drury, Dean of Arts and Science, and Rosanna Zia, Associate Dean for Research in Engineering. The Center for Energy Innovation will achieve breakthroughs in sustainability, resilience, and energy performance for our state and beyond. Bringing together faculty from engineering, arts and science, and CAFNR will create a world-class research facility that will inspire new discoveries only possible through interdisciplinary research. We will recruit and retain world-class faculty in many disciplines, including engineering, chemistry, and physics. The increased research productivity will help strengthen our position within the AAU. We'll also increase our enrollment in various energy-related disciplines by inspiring future generations to join us in working toward a more sustainable future. Finally, and most importantly, all our research and workforce development efforts through the center will have a great positive impact on our state. The Center for Energy Innovation building will be housed on Mizzou campus, right next to the engineering building. It'll be a 180,000 square foot research and development center. It'll house 65 faculty and 350 researchers working in highly cross-disciplinary research neighborhoods, working on addressing the grand challenges in energy. Half of the faculty, around 30 of them, we are currently identifying them at MU that are conducting high impact research, and the remaining 35 will recruit them through Mizzou Forward and other hiring initiatives at MU. The research ecosystem we'll build will address national and state needs, critical state needs in energy. We'll leverage existing funding programs at Department of Energy, National Science Foundation, and Department of Defense. To give you some examples, the Department of Energy's programs on Energy Frontiers Research Center, the hydrogen earth charts on both storage and fuel cells are very related to our efforts. And on the infrastructure side, NSF's programs in cyber infrastructure, high performance, and advanced computing are specifically geared to things that we want to do within the center. Through the center's designation, this will put us on a national map of energy research preeminence. Through the center, we'll also engage with our industry partners on 3 different focus areas. 1, we'll serve them with the critical workforce that they need for the emerging energy areas that they are faced with. This will also help us position our students with increased internship opportunities, co-ops, full-time job opportunities with them. The second focus will serve as the research arm for many companies that just don't have the capabilities on emerging research areas within energy. And third, we'll partner with many of these companies in pursuing new federal grant opportunities, thereby bringing new federal dollars to our state. Our vision at the center, specifically on research, is in 4 major thrusts: nuclear energy, hydrogen and renewables, energy storage, and power grid resilience and cybersecurity of that grid. Each thrust will be served by at least 15 world-class faculty working on competitively funded AAU Phase 1 research. Half of the faculty are currently already at MU, and we'll double that expertise through Mizzou Forward and other programs. So all these faculty will not only be conducting groundbreaking research in energy that'll help us improve AAU expenditures, but they'll also serve our teaching mission and help us grow our enrollment in several programs. The center will drive significant enrollment growth in many disciplines, including in engineering and science. Within engineering, we expect a 10-year enrollment growth in several energy-related areas, and the new programs will launch an enrollment growth of 900 students at the undergraduate level, 400 students at the graduate level. In chemistry, we expect to double the enrollment in undergraduate and graduate programs. In physics, we expect to triple the enrollment at the undergraduate and double them at the graduate level. The Center for Energy Innovation is a bold new concept that will transform energy research and education in our state. This will have a generational impact on workforce development, and it'll impact our society in many positive ways. Now my colleague, Dr. Zia, will go over the inner workings of the center with you.
So the building itself is designed to actually accelerate research, and multidisciplinary teams will be organized into research neighborhoods, each neighborhood working on a grand challenge problem. Chemists, physicists, engineers, and data scientists will work side by side to work on these grand challenge problems. So I'd like to show you a floor-by-floor view of the thematic areas of research in the building. The first floor is devoted to nuclear energy. There we go. A key part of any sustainable energy plan, as well as energy independence for Missouri. So here in research, we will focus on small modular reactors, for industry and consumer power, microreactors, which are essential for naval, air force, and Army mobile power, AI-driven autonomous reactor monitoring, nuclear engineered materials, sustainable aviation fuels, policy, as well as workforce development. So here we emphasize that we are leveraging one of MU's superpowers, which is its massive footprint and international recognition in nuclear science. If we drill down just a little bit here, this area holds great potential to make Missouri the nation's center for research and manufacturing for small modular and microreactors. To that end, we will also be installing a non-nuclear twin, which we will use to understand all aspects of reactor design, as well as material and machine elements. We also use this to design new processes for production of clean hydrogen and sustainable aviation fuels using nuclear power. There we go. So the second level would be devoted to our rapidly expanding footprint in hydrogen and renewables, which will include such elements as electrolysis, catalysis, and direct water cracking technologies, as well as sustainable aviation fuels, kerosene for mobile military power, ethanol and biodiesel from biomass, as well as hydrogen storage, carbon capture, and then renewable energy policy. The third level will be devoted to energy storage technologies, and this includes battery technologies, thermochemical storage, wide bandgap semiconductors, as well as advances in AI-driven autonomous materials design and discovery, another area where we have a special footprint at MU. We'll also work on global, national, and state policy, as well as workforce development for reshoring of microelectronics fabrication facilities. Finally, the fourth floor is where we bring it all together, which is power grids. And so our work here will ensure security, resilience, and innovation for the nation's power grids. For security, we'll be developing AI and blockchain security algorithms, cyber physical and satellite data security, so the grid understands that an instruction coming in is coming in from a friendly resource, as well as geospatial science with AI and intelligence. Innovation will include AI processes for autonomous grid balancing, as well as power electronics, wide bandgap semiconductors, and financial risk assessment algorithms. And then in the building, there will be a lot of education and training that will exert a pronounced economic impact on the state of Missouri by training future generations of scientists and researchers. This, of course, will give our undergraduates premier degrees that will be highly sought after in the various areas shown here, as well as PhD degrees with really sought after degrees in nuclear science engineering, materials science and engineering, alongside other areas, as well as our internationally recognized programs in chemistry, physics, economics, and public policy. As announced earlier, approved earlier, we will be working with engineering technologist degrees, in particular excited about the ones focused on nuclear engineering technologists, microelectronics, and engineering technology. We'll also be working on technician certifications with partners at other schools for modular reactor construction as well as microelectronics fabrication facilities. And I'll turn it over now to my colleague, Dr. Drury.
Thank you very much. All right, let's see if we can get this to work. Here we go. I'm going to turn our attention right now to the broader impact that Center for Energy Innovation will have on the state. So in addition to the groundbreaking research, the economic impact, and the workforce development, CEI will be open to and attract young Missourians from organizations such as FFA, 4-H, Invention Scouts, and others. We're going to partner with these organizations and bring these students in so they can see the amazing work that's being done in CEI. And whether these young students go on to come to the University of Missouri or one of our 4 campuses, which is obviously my personal preference, or whether they go into the workforce, the experience that they'll be having in the building learning about the future of energy will serve them for the rest of their lives. So now I'm going to talk about the budget. We've got to pay for this thing. The budget is $160 million all in for the building. We have been very tightly focused on keeping the costs at a minimum and at the same time keeping a vision so that this building will be a platform for research and innovation for decades to come. We have to pay for this, we have a $60 million philanthropy goal. Thus far, we have raised $6.3 million. We have another $56 million of proposals being considered as I speak, and a planned $65 million more proposals that would be going out. We're working on those now. I'd like to add that we are continuing to find prospects so that it is I'll just say my expectation that our total proposals will be above 121 million by the time we finish. All right, so we have a very aggressive schedule here, building schedule. As you can see, we've finished the schematic design. We've hired a construction manager. We hired Whiting Turner. That's the same firm that built NextGen. We are now working on the building and lab design, and pending your approval in February, we will break ground in the spring. And then 3 years from this month right now, substantial construction will be completed and we will be moving into the building. So what I'd like to do is bring us back to the really big picture here. The prosperity and security of all Americans is increasingly dependent upon energy, data, AI, and I would argue that there's nothing in our lives that is not dependent on these factors. Certainly, a secure and sustainable energy sources are absolutely essential for our prosperity, our future prosperity. So, in the Center for Energy Innovation, we will discover and design groundbreaking innovations so that all Missourians, all Americans, will have a greater energy security, physical security, and cybersecurity. Thank you, and we'd be happy to take your questions.
Any questions?
Are there plans to partner with other universities within the system? The answer is yes.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely yes. And I've already engaged with UMKC and the deans at UMKC engineering and the S&T engineering program. So I said, as soon as we're done with the curators meeting, I'll be sharing the very slides that you all saw with them, and we'll have follow-up discussions on how they can be involved. Absolutely, thank you.
How interrelated is this to the research reactor?
It's very closely connected to the reactor in the sense that we're utilizing the almost 250 staff and faculty associated with the reactor to build up the research ecosystem. However, the actual physical infrastructure that we plan will be separate from from MER itself. The non-nuclear twin that we'll be building and installing will be focused on nuclear energy, which is distinct from nuclear science.
And what in broad strokes, would we see a 10%, potentially a 10% increase to our federal dollars, or I mean, 5%, 2%? And again, this is not a hold you to it number.
I expect to see at least a 25% increase. We are not as successful in NSF and DOD and DOE funding. with this investment, I expect those numbers to go up significantly.
And we're already well on our way with that. The president has given us this mandate, and I watch our expenditures every month, and we're already on track for a 25% increase on this fiscal year. And we have substantially higher increase in the number of submissions for proposals surrounding this energy center.
Any other questions?
If I can add real quick, part of what will allow, oh, right, sorry. Part of what will allow that 25% increase is that, so we've already begun recruiting through Mizzou Forward. We have some folks that are doing energy work, and they're really excited about the potential for this building. And we saw this with NextGen as well. This building is going to become a magnet for the best researchers in the country. So the folks that we're going to bring in are going to be top scholars with lots of federal funding.
All right, thank you. If there are no further questions, we'll move on to our next topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to hear from each campus. We're out of order here a little bit on their development and fundraising support. Presenting for MU will be Jackie Lewis, Vice Chancellor for Advancement, S&T, Victoria Verkamp, Vice Chancellor for Advancement, UMKC, Amanda Davis, Chief Advancement Office and Foundation President, and UMSL, Lisa Capone, Vice Chancellor for Advancement.
Excellent. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. And I would like to start by sharing with you the work, let's see.
Place it over there.
There we go. Aha, there we go. So I would like to start by sharing with you the work the advancement team has focused on in preparation of our next comprehensive campaign, working with BWF, a nationally known consulting firm who conducted an overall assessment of the advancement operation. We've taken the following actions. We have focused on key growth areas, particularly in principal gifts, by creating a principal gifts department to ensure we have a cohesive, comprehensive strategy for the solicitation of $5 million plus donors. This includes hiring 2 experienced fundraisers, a stewardship director, director of strategy, and we are taking a very aggressive approach to identify new prospects as well as cultivating known high-capacity donors. We've also filled critical leadership gaps and made strategic hires in key roles across advancement, including major gifts, corporate and foundation giving, and MU Healthcare and School of Medicine. And you can see on the slide the list of large, complex institutions from where we have recruited. I'll mention just a couple. Our new Associate Vice Chancellor for Development spent more than 20 years at Dartmouth. Our new Associate Vice Chancellor for Donor Engagement came to us from the University of Iowa, and our new Campaign Director came to us from WashU. Other staff have been recruited from Iowa State, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Purdue. We've modernized our annual giving program, which focuses on gifts of less than $50,000 through the use of data analytics, targeted messaging, and enhanced technology. And this will help us grow our donor pipeline. And by centralizing stewardship processes and procedures, we can ensure greater donor satisfaction by reporting philanthropic impact and acknowledging all gifts in a consistent and a timely manner. We've also enlisted a firm called Plus Delta Partners, which is a nationally known consulting firm specializing in the education of fundraising training. All of our staff has been trained, and we will continue to train new staff as they join the organization. Additionally, all of our university leadership has participated in the training. So Mizzou is in the planning stages of our $2 billion comprehensive campaign. We have identified campaign themes and funding priorities that will address a number of grand challenges. We have recruited our volunteer leadership committee, consisting of a group of our highest capacity donors, and we have made strategic hires and will continue to grow our advancement team. And this fall, we are conducting a soft launch of the campaign by hosting events in key markets across the state and country. And we are also hosting salons with our highest capacity donors in key markets to test our campaign messaging related to our themes and funding priorities to ensure that they resonate with our most generous donors. In this slide represents national trends in giving according to Giving USA. So you can see the change either upward and downward for various sectors. And you can see that giving to education is on the decline. However, we are taking ambitious steps to ensure Mizzou's trajectory to overall fundraising productivity is on the upward climb. We're being aggressive in our strategies and focused in our approach. This slide demonstrates the past 10 years of giving at Mizzou. The last comprehensive campaign ended in June of 2020 and was followed by a decrease in dollars raised, which is typical of the years following a campaign while an organization prepares for the next campaign. We rebounded well in fiscal year 2023, raising $172.5 million, which is the second strongest fundraising year in Mizzou's history. But to continue to grow fundraising, we are taking an aggressive approach to principal gifts fundraising, along with growing the number of staff to focus entirely on our highest capacity donors. We've created a more deliberate and disciplined prospect review process and donor strategy sessions. And we are actively engaging university leaders in the cultivation and solicitation of principal gift donors. We are also taking the same approach, focused approach, in managing corporations and foundation relationships, as that presents a great opportunity for growth for Mizzou. And training our staff to sharpen their skills with Plus Delta partners, we've incorporated techniques to shorten the cultivation period while increasing the size of gifts. Mizzou's donor retention rate has been on the upward trend for the past 3 years, meaning donors are continuing to give year over year. Best practices suggest that a retention rate above 50% is positive, and donor relations and stewardship improvements that I mentioned earlier will have a positive impact on our retention rates. We have introduced a more personalized approach to stewarding donors, especially major gift and principal gift level donors. As well, our modernized approach to annual giving utilizes technology so that we can communicate with donors in a new way through text messaging and video messaging, which will maintain a high level of personalization. This slide represents donor counts on an annual basis over the past 10 years. You can see that the smaller number of donors are giving a greater portion of each year's totals, which reflects a global trend of declining donor participation. In our case, COVID impacted philanthropy in an adverse way, in that we could not engage with donors and prospects on a personal level, which is challenging because we are a relationship business. Additionally, FY20 marked the end of our last comprehensive campaign, and that natural trend is that giving drops at the end of a campaign until the next campaign wraps up. So to reverse the trend, we have incorporated new strategies, particularly with the annual giving program, where we are utilizing data analytics and technology to create a more personalized approach to bring in new individuals as we build the donor pipeline. And a new Grateful Patient and Grateful Family program will create greater philanthropic investment with a new market of potential donors. And we are continuing to strengthen our donor stewardship strategies, which will result in stronger donor retention. And finally, we have created a focus on discovery work and qualification of new prospects in preparation for the next campaign. And this slide represents the breakdown of giving between cash pledges and planned gifts. You can see in fiscal year 23, approximately 70% of our gifts were cash or pledge, while 30% were planned gifts or estate gifts. And this ratio is in line with best practices in our industry. A healthy balance is between 75-25% to 60-40% ratio, so we feel like we're in a good position with our ratio. And for fiscal year 23, 58% of giving was non-endowed, while 42% of total giving was endowed. This ratio will fluctuate based on funding priorities. For example, when a focus is to raise capital dollars for new buildings, the non-endowed portion will increase because we are seeking gifts to spend immediately for a building project. Our average donation for non-endowed gifts for fiscal year 23 was $1,330, and the average donation for annual gifts was $481, and annual gifts at Mizzou are gifts less than $50,000. This slide represents the giving purposes for fiscal year 23 at Mizzou. You can see the breakdown between facilities, faculty, programs, student support, and sponsored support. And finally, I wanted to share with you Mizzou's rankings based on endowment size. And this is for the most current reporting period of fiscal year 22. And Mizzou's endowment is approximately $1.4 billion. So you can see among our SEC peers, we are ranked in 8th place, while among all public institutions, we are 38th. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I have, excuse me, what technology do you need to be able to go into a new campaign?
That's a great question. We have invested in new technology. There are a number of programs that are built specifically for higher education fundraising. So we have invested in that. I feel like we're in a pretty good position for that, although over time that technology improves and we'll need to be improving with it. So I think that that's part of where we're investing right now, is to make sure we've got the appropriate technology.
Well, then I know one of the things you always hear between campaigns is the emphasis on stewardship, to get, the donor to
Yes.
ride with you from one campaign to the next. If you're talking about that there's been an emphasis on stewardship, how do you, and if you're giving away a secret, don't say it here, but what is different about the stewardship program going to this next campaign, or as you're going into the campaign?
Yes, thank you for the question. We are centralizing a number of the processes and functionality of stewardship. We want to be certain that we are consistent in our approach and that it's to scale with the giving levels, if that makes sense. So we want to be sure that our higher level donors are receiving a higher level of attention and engagement through the campaign. All stewardship is important, and we're trying to personalize it as much as we can, some of which is possible through technology. So even our annual giving and lesser level donors are having a different experience because we're able to personalize their communication with us in a new way.
This chart shows our ranking on endowment. How do we rank
Yes.
on annual giving or production?
I'm happy to check that out for you. Annual giving fluctuates year over year. So we do something called VSE reporting, which is just cash reporting of our productivity each year. I'm happy to get those numbers for you.
Okay.
Some other numbers I might like to see is that this is total giving, whether it's athletics,
Correct.
medical school, on and on. I'd like to see a breakdown on what buckets this giving has gone to. I mean, the athletics itself, like when you say donors, does that include the amount of money that a season ticket holder pays in additional if they're on a club level or if they're in a suite? And I don't know how it's broken down.
Right. Happy to get that information to you. Typically, the suite income doesn't come through philanthropy, but there are points earned that then lead to philanthropy. So we can get that information for you as well.
Yeah, and I'd like to see it broken down between the different factions.
Absolutely. We can do that.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next up?
Good afternoon. Here we go. My name is Tori Verkamp, and I am pleased to be here representing Missouri S&T today. I'm recently named in the Vice Chancellor role, but I've known system for quite some time. I consider myself Mizzou made and S&T embraced. My degrees are from Mizzou, but I've been at S&T for almost a decade now, and I can tell you, in all of those years, this is the most exciting time to be at Rolla. We're hearing that from our students, from our staff, from our faculty, and from our 70,000 alumni that we have. There's a buzz and an energy that's really exciting to be a part of. So a little bit about us. 2 years ago, our Division of University Advancement at Missouri S&T earned national recognition from CASE. We were called an organization that punches above their weight, and we're very proud of that accolade. We were a team that ranks lower in categories like budgets and enrollment, but higher in funds raised. And you'll see that in some of the statistics I have here for you. Our fundraising team is comprised of 11 major gift officers and 2 annual giving team members that support our alumni base. When we talk about our endowment, for some context, we look at the 3 different entities that support Missouri S&T. So certainly the funds held by the Curators of the University of Missouri, designated to Missouri S&T, the Minor Alumni Association endowment, and then the long-term fund of the Cummer Institute Foundation that supports S&T specifically. So all told, that's over $500 million in support made possible by our generous alumni. As many of my colleagues here today are telling you as well, we are in campaign planning today. So we are fast and furiously working towards launching that next campaign. We know that Missouri S&T is poised to solve tomorrow's great challenges, and our campaign priorities will follow suit. So 3 key priorities that we have identified thus far include the BioPlex and BioX initiative. I know this board has heard a little bit about that. Engaging engineering minds in healthcare. To bring that vision to reality, it will require state-of-the-art facilities. It'll require investment in our faculty and student support, and that's where philanthropy comes in to bring BioPlex and BioX to life. Also, we're moving fast and furiously with critical minerals and critical materials. The work that's happening in that space on our campus is gaining great momentum. We were recently named a tech hub. That's just been one vote of confidence in the work we're doing in that space. What we see in the future is an opportunity for semiconductor engineering as a program on our campus. And I can tell you donors today are already standing up, raising their hands and saying, we want to be a part of that vision. So we're thrilled to move forward critical minerals and materials. Last but not least, we'll be working in the area of hypersonics. We believe that our campus is perfectly poised to have an arc jet facility on our campus, and development comes in leveraging the great relationships we have in aerospace engineering, many of our alumni and industry contacts there. Finally, as is the case in any campaign, it requires a portfolio of different types of gifts to get you to that campaign goal. Some support endowment, some to non-endowed funds. And we have a bold goal of reaching $1 billion endowment on our campus. That would put us in a top 40 spot of public universities and be a game changer at Missouri S&T. So we'll be working towards that metric as we move forward. A look at where we've been over the last 10 years and where we are today. We concluded our last comprehensive campaign in fiscal year 21. That was the Rolla Rising campaign. It was a 6-year campaign that we were able to end early with $423 million in philanthropy. That's the green section of the chart, thanks to a transformational gift by Fred and June Cummer. So you all have heard about the impact made by the Cummer gift. We continue to see that impact be influential on our alumni today. Our donor retention rate year over year currently stands at 60%. What we shared on this slide was during the duration of the last campaign, the trend that Jackie mentioned in her presentation, we're seeing on our campus, a lower number of donors, but higher fundraising dollars year over year. In the last year, our average gift to a fund that was not endowed was $1,840. And this view shows you both the endowment and the non-endowed gifts that we have each year. When I move to this next slide, and if you compare the two, in many instances, not every, but in most instances where we had a big leap in endowment in a year, it was likely a deferred gift to endowment that was booked, a commitment that we were able to close that year and put on our books that spoke to endowment. You'll also notice that we've had significant cash giving in the last couple of years. Visionary capital projects on our campus are really driving the cash giving. So if you've been on campus lately, seen the Arrival District, the Protoplex, the Innovation Lab, the Welcome Center, the list goes on and on. Those capital projects influence our cash. And finally, we have a look at giving to designation or purpose. The story on this slide is really that student support is our #1 compelling priority on our campus. That's important to the work we do because we tie every fundraising project that we can to the story of student support and student impact. And when we can do that, we know that we have a more successful result. And finally, here's our number of gifts that make up those different priorities. This will point you to both our major gift efforts and our annual giving efforts. For example, those 84 gifts in the yellow category for capital, $6 million in support, that's a major gift project. We have a mind of our own, I'm sorry. You look at 5,000 distinct gifts here. It's an annual giving program that we're looking at. So our phone-a-thon efforts, our mailers and solicitations, it takes a larger number of distinct gifts when you're talking about annual giving to get the same result that you would for major gifts.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
And maybe I missed it. What's the size of your current endowment?
Just over, if you count the 3 different entities, we're just over 500 million.
Then you talked about your numbers going up when you book a gift. That's going to be an estate gift. So is it realized when you book it, or is it realized when the person passes away and you receive it? Or I'm just trying to figure out if we're double counting.
You can count it if you have all of the documentation required by our industry when you receive it as a commitment. You cannot count it again when it
Just
comes in the
clarifying.
door.
Okay. And so that's standard across all of our universities. Okay,
That's right.
thank you.
All right.
Your slide, excuse me, your slide on the endowment, the 3 pieces, and
That's
one
right.
was, of course, the Cummer Institute. And I believe that figure was like 278 million. Now, we've all been made aware of what the size of it was before. Is there a portion of that's just only for endowment and another portion for other uses?
Correct. So a portion has been pulled off for one-time monies, primarily for capital projects that the foundation has chose to invest in.
If I may, to is still there, but it's designated with a different.
Don't press the button. On.
It's on, don't
Okay,
press the
yes.
button.
So the money is still there, Curator Holloway, but it's designated for a different purpose. If you put all the money together, we are close to 400 million on that money.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. Thanks for having us, and thanks for your interest in advancement. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Amanda Davis, just over a year, about a year and 2 weeks, honestly, into my role at UMKC. But I am a product of the University of Missouri system completely. Both my undergrad degrees come from Mizzou, and my master's degree comes from UMKC. I've worked in nonprofit management for 24 years at this point and have significant campaign experience, so very pleased to be back at UMKC at this moment when we are building, much like S&T, there's a great deal of excitement and buzz within our alumni, and we have some very ambitious plans taking us forward into the future. A little bit about our team. We don't have a tremendously strong history of weaving together alumni relations and development together for advancement success at UMKC, and that's one of our big priorities right now. So we are in rebuilding phase. Our team is about 35 professionals providing services and raising funds for all areas of UMKC. Our goal is primarily to lead the execution of advancement strategies and activities that includes fundraising, alumni relations, et cetera, but we also view ourselves as very much a facilitator of the work across the campuses, and that increases our reach and makes our results much better than they could be alone. And roughly our composition of work is development, alumni relations, advancement services, donor relations / stewardship, and then of course gift processing, which is an incredibly important part of what we do. I'll just breeze through this because I feel like you've heard this before from my other colleagues, but the industry is rethinking participation rate as a measure of success that allows us to really focus on quality programming for our donors and for our alumni, which is great for us. We have an increasingly tight talent market. We also have a tight market for gifts themselves, a lot of competition with other charities, and we have to think of our investors as or our donors as having an investor mindset and really think about the experience experience that we're giving them, and then the benefit that we are able to demonstrate on the back end of their gifts to us. So donor expectations are incredibly high. This requires a lot of sophistication, and for us, this means a reliance on advancement services and data and analytics in a way that we've never seen before. And I think Jackie talked a little bit about that when she was talking about Mizzou's plans for the future. For us at UMKC in particular, there are a lot of opportunities around mid-level giving, which has never been a strong suit for us. In addition to that, as you'll see a little bit later, a tremendous amount of potential around planned giving as we see the transfer. I feel like we've been in a great wealth transfer for the past 20 years. When you talk about development, you hear about it a lot, but that's true once again as we see the transfer of wealth from greatest generation and the boomers to other generations. And so we have opportunities there with planned giving to really boost results, particularly around the endowment. For UMKC, I'll just kind of breeze through these really quickly. We, like every other colleague that I have in the room, are preparing for a comprehensive campaign. Our last one was 20 years ago at this point, so we have some fertile ground there to work on. We will be tentatively looking at a $500 million goal for that campaign. That's double what we were doing the last time we were in comprehensive campaign mode. And again, in order to prepare for that, much like Mizzou, we are really focused on creating infrastructure, making the right hires, training, and also training up our academic leadership on the campuses so that they can participate in the development process. Primarily at this point, our campaign priorities are around facilities. Obviously, everyone's heard about the HDI building, the work in St. Joseph, but there are a number of other capital opportunities that are coming down the pike for us that I'm sure you're hearing about as curators. But we will also be looking a lot at research and faculty support as additional campaign priorities as we kind of develop the soul of the campaign going forward. Really quickly, our history at UMKC in terms of overall giving, this is about a 10-year history that you're looking at right here, 8 years since the inception of the UMKC Foundation. We have an average around $35 to $40 million of annual contributions coming in the door. We had our best year ever last year. Can't take credit for it, but we were raising money for facilities and capital, and that tends to be really inspirational for donors. So you will see that the last year, FY23, was the best that we ever had at UMKC in terms of overarching giving. Our previous high was $65 million. But that sort of roller coaster appearance that you see is an indicator of a program that doesn't have that sort of overarching engine of giving coming in, and that is what our focus on building infrastructure and really developing that pipeline and that engine of giving going forward is going to be all about. Overall number of donors is pretty steady, and you'll see in a moment that we have a great retention rate. We're quite proud of that. Over the past couple of years, we've seen, like our colleagues, a little bit of a drop, but there's a tremendous amount of potential just because we haven't been very strong in alumni giving in the past at UMKC to really see this number grow, and that's a little bit different than many other shops that have been doing this work for a long time and had success with it. So a little bit of a drop over the course of the past year, but as we get into campaign mode and we build that excitement and we're talking more about UMKC within our alumni community, we will begin to see that number raise, I predict. FY23, just to give you kind of a sense of where we have been, our average annual gift is $73. So again, that's really low when you look at the other institutions in the system. And that is not, in my opinion, and based on the data that I've seen, an indicator of a lack of potential within our alum base. It's just that we haven't had effective programming in the past. And so I expect that you will see that average gift really begin to tick up as we get into campaign mode and as we build efficacy in our pipeline and with our people. Number of new donors, last year, 2,300, that was high for us. So we're getting pretty good at acquisition, and that will contribute to higher average annual gifts and overall donor counts. Our donor retention rate is 67%, which, remembering what Jackie was saying about sort of best practices and what you expect to see, way over 50%. Honestly, our donor retention rate at UMKC is usually closer to 70%. So we have a lot of strength there. Once we get people in the door, they tend not to leave us. We just need to continue to build on that loyalty, get really good at acquisition so that we can bring more folks in the door. Just a quick note, at UMKC, we define an annual gift as anything that's renewable and repeatable and below that $25,000 figure, which is a pretty common definition for institutions of our size. mind of its own. You're right, Victoria. Cash and pledge versus plan gifts. When I was talking earlier about our opportunity set, it becomes incredibly obvious when you look at this donut chart. 99% of our giving, and this is not unusual for us, in the last fiscal year was cash or pledge, and only 1% were plan gifts realized or committed. We have a tremendous amount of potential to grow there. That again is reflective of sort of a lack of alumni giving. Individuals who have that strong connection with you, those alumni tend to be the ones who give these plan gifts. We haven't worked with those folks as much in the past, so you don't see them appearing here, but that means that there is a whole world of people out there that we have to go to grow this area. And particularly, those gifts tend to go to endowment, so hopefully we'll see growth in that area as well. Give purpose was another thing that we were asked to talk about. For us, especially last year, the majority of our giving, 49%, was capital. I expect that trend will continue in the coming years because we're really going to be emphasizing capital projects in the early years of the campaign. But over time, I would like to see growth in particularly the faculty support and research support areas. You'll see student support as 11% of our overarching total. That's really unusual for an institution like us. Ordinarily, you see more in the student support area, so that's an indicator that I think we have some growth there to do, even as we pursue capital gifts and research and faculty support as part of the campaign. And that is pretty much it for me. Short and sweet, succinct. Are there any questions for you, Casey?
Obviously your bio, you came from the University of Oklahoma, and I noticed on one of the earlier slides they're really high on their endowment. How did they do that?
Consistent effort over the course of a number of years. So OU is really interesting as an endowment and as a foundation. They, for many years, just sort of functioned as a bank for the university, and then they decided to kind of combine the strength of their advancement operation with the strength of investment management that they had in the foundation and really capitalize on some of those investment proceeds to grow their advancement program. So the reason that they have such a big endowment, I think, is really attributable to their brand. When you think about the football team, the popularity, the loyalty that alum base and those fans feel towards the institution. When I was there, you saw plan gifts to the endowment just kind of rolling in on an annual basis that hadn't really been the result of targeted work by advancement professionals. So it really has to do with the brand, but I think that you will probably see their endowment grow exponentially over the course of that $2 billion campaign that I launched with them right before I left the institution. So that one is one to watch, but it's really the result of consistent effort and branding.
Okay. Other questions?
Only comment, I really like the idea of the mid-range donors as a program. I'm sure everybody's doing it, but I appreciate you calling that out because I think we get focused on the big gifts, and that's amazing. But these are the people we got to be thinking about growing to get to those bigger gifts. So I really appreciate it.
Deliberate pipeline growth is the wave of the future and the only way that we get there. So thank you for noticing that.
Curator Graves, over
Yes.
here.
The voice from above, yes.
Yeah. Just a quick comment because the question was asked in terms of the total endowment supporting the different institutions. For UMKC, just the way UMKC has evolved and grown, our endowments are fragmented into many different pockets. That's another story, but to put all of them together, we are in the upper 300s to about 400 million.
All right, great. All right, well, thank you.
So much, everyone.
Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Capone. I'm thrilled to be here. I've been at UMSL for 1 year, and with the major goal of growing private gifts for our next 60 years of transformation. The Chancellor covered quite a bit about our total alumni, and so let me make a mention about our 60th anniversary celebrations. The Advancement Division is taking this opportunity to produce several signature events and activities to broadly engage constituents, alumni, friends, honor 60 remarkable donors, and showcase the collective impact and contribution that UMSL alumni have on the community through UMSL Serves, which will count 60,000 hours of service by our alumni to our community. The division is comprised of 4 departments, and I'm happy to report that as of today, actually Monday of this week, our advancement leadership team is now fully in place with 2 recent key hires, including Ryan McDonald, Associate Vice Chancellor for Development and Chief Development Officer, and Jessica Chanel Eiler, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Advancement Services. Over the past year, we've undertook a division-wide reassessment and realignment. We're reviewing team responsibilities to create the needed staffing specializations and metrics. We centralize core functions like events and stewardships in order to gain real capacity for fundraisers to be on the road seeing donors. And we're aligning the work of our boards in order to serve better the UMSL strategic plan priorities. Lastly, we completed a donor search or a wealth screening that's allowed us to focus more and organize ourselves around principal gifts, but also identify key alumni and friends and donors that may be outside of the greater St. Louis region in areas like Chicago, Florida, DC, Kansas City, and other places. And so we are getting on the road. Considering the development of our 5-year strategic plan and other priorities, including the physical transformation of campus, Advancement is actively planning for our next campaign. I see some consistencies running through here. You heard about some trends in the industry already from many of my colleagues, which I fully support, and we face many of the same here at UMSL. I might just add and want to emphasize that there is a great need to be consistent and personalized with engagement and scale that throughout the pipeline. So from annual giving, leadership annual giving, major gift and beyond, getting more specific and personalized with donor messaging, with alumni experiences requires a high reliance on data analytics, predictive modeling, and technology services, as well as the full integration of supporting functions across campus, and really personnel with these specialty skill sets. Ultimately, everyone on campus plays a critical role in the success of Advancement. And I'd love to give you one example. Recently, the Advancement Division partnered strategically with our Scholarship Office to evaluate and ultimately enhance how we solicit for, manage, and steward important gifts to scholarships. At UMSL, we are working to be a high ROI advancement shop, which is actually defined by EAB, or the Educational Advisory Board, which works really with thousands of universities across the country. And this was an official study of theirs. We have emphasized first hiring and training of major gift officers. Our focus now is really working towards building best practice data and really foundational operational practices that will enhance alumni and donor experiences, and also annual giving solicitations, which is very data intensive. Strategic priorities include campaign planning efforts, starting with creating a real culture of philanthropy at UMSL, both internally and externally, by boldly showcasing the impact of philanthropy. We have a heightened focus on endowments to create sustainable revenue for really key programs across the institution. And we are working towards operational best practices, particularly emphasizing a performance culture through the use of tracking and reporting on metrics, but maybe more importantly, the full activation of our alumni and donor database. Some of our challenges, but also opportunities: attracting, retaining, and onboarding top talent. That's nothing new. Many organizations are facing the same thing. However, our top challenge ultimately resides with a major data practice deficit. So with our new AVC of Advancement Services, again, starting this week, we will have a sharp focus over the remainder of the fiscal year to close the gap and really rebuild business process development, data integrity audits, and ultimately data acquisition projects. Lastly, in the coming slides, you will see a need and opportunity for us to significantly grow our gift planning efforts and also major gifts through alumni and corporate giving. UMSL strategic priorities include primarily our campus transformation capital projects, and we're excited about 18 months in, maybe a little bit less. We are already 40% of our goal to date. In fact, just in June, we did the groundbreaking for the Richter Family Welcome and Alumni Center, and certainly appreciate Curator Winterker for joining us on that special day. It was a beautiful day. We're also emphasizing fundraising for student support, scholarships, bridge programs, business and workforce aligned initiatives, and faculty and teaching and research support. Over the past several years, UMSL has been, I would say, mostly flat in fundraising productivity, averaging about 17 million in private gifts annually. That's in the gold. With the addition of private grants in red, we have reported between $22 and $24 million a year on average. The division aims, as you can see further down into that slide, it coincides with our recent organization, to achieve a $30 million fundraising production with actually much more significant focus on private gifts, which is essential for campaign success. Really, the fundamental idea here is that with an investment in major gift officers, with principal gift efforts, with plain giving efforts, we can grow the base. It takes time. On average, it takes about 2 years, maybe 3 years for a new major gift officer to be fully productive with their portfolio. And then our 10-year number of donors, you can see again, is about flat, with a drop in fiscal year 2022, which coincides with key leadership changes the prior year, as well as the CRM database conversion, which impacted some solicitation and business continuity efforts. The good news, of course, is that we're back on track, we're back on the rise, and that is intended to continue to grow in order to see campaign success. UMSL defines annual gifts as new gifts and pledges less than $30,000. Of the $15 million in private fundraising production through private gifts last year, $10.5 million would be classified as annual gifts. Sorry, I think yep. In addition, we saw over 9,000 new donors. And lastly, I am proud to report that I work with a great group of colleagues who personally give back to the institution we serve. UMSL's leadership team has a 100% participation rate for giving, and that includes the cabinet and our deans, which is wonderful. I will venture to say in my 20-year career, this is the first time I've been ever able to report that. So it's wonderful news. In FY23, non-endowed gifts and pledges made up 88% of fundraising production. And while we are intentionally raising money for capital projects, endowment gifts we aim to grow. It's a major priority because ultimately we need to sustain, not just raise money for 1 year or 2 years, we need to sustain the major projects of our institution in perpetuity. Outright gifts make up 80% of fundraising, and as mentioned before, it is necessary to grow plain gifts, not only for the campaign, but also to significantly grow realized revenue in the future. If planned gifts are the largest gifts that we receive today to count, it's the largest cash flow our finance team will receive in years to come. They're essentially important and help grow cash flow by orders of magnitude in future years. And lastly, nearly half of fundraising production in the prior fiscal year was designated to academic and program support, with capital gifts on the rise in a secondary space and also student support. Ultimately, the advancement team has done a lot to play an active leadership role in helping to grow our institution over the next 60 years. Appreciate your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, no questions. So we're going to thank you, all four of you. Thank you for your presentations. As far as the schedule goes, if you have the written one in front of you, we're going to go back to the beginning and pick up the things that we missed. First report's going to be from Ryan Rapp, Executive Vice President of Finance and Operations and CFO. He's going to review the fiscal year 2023 financial status report.
Thank you, Curator Graves. The detailed reports contained in your material. Today I just wanted to review a summary of that and see what questions the board might have. We've wrapped up FY23. I want to thank our team for getting through the financial statement audit and having our reports issued. I always feel like we're managing across 3 fiscal years. We're always wrapping up one, trying to monitor performance in the current one, and then planning for the next one. Just a couple of key points to take away from the report. I'm glad to note, we set not only metrics, but then targets at the consolidated level, and then for you'll sometimes hear me refer to our 5 business units, and that's really our 4 universities and MU Healthcare. On the consolidated level, we were at or above target for all 4 metrics. That being said, as we look forward and we feel good about where we ended FY23, we are seeing inflation and then also seeing some of the stimulus dollars as they fade. That's putting pressure on just our operating margins. The key, for our 4 higher education institutions is really focusing on how do we maintain those enrollments, generate revenue growth at or above inflation. Healthcare continues to really focus on improving its financial performance, as you heard from Rick Barron this morning, by continuing to try to manage rising labor costs and then thinking about capital spending as we've come off a couple of years of pretty large scale investments at healthcare, both in terms of the Children's Tower and some expansion into CRMC. I think the key point for us as a university is we remain committed to managing our expenses within growth, and we'll have more conversation about that as we get into February and we talk about financial planning. I think one of the things I'd also highlight is just our current capital investments. I think you've probably heard it from all 4 universities. It's a really exciting time, but at the same time, those are for capital. Those aren't really going into our operating budgets. And so we've got a lot of opportunity there because we have record funding, but the capital investments don't drive really the operating budget. I just wanted to point that out. As we think about this is really just trying to prime the board for what will be coming forward in February, but every February, this is kind of the end of one performance cycle. Then in February, we start over. We bring forward what our financial plan is. We go over what we're recommending as the targets of the board, and we set those at the unit level. And then, I think that's established in our collected rules. I think it continues to be a key for us as we move forward. I know when we speak with our credit rating agencies, I think they look at the financial planning framework we have and continue to see it as a key strength. I did want to just spend a little bit of time on this chart, and I noted in the paper, I think the Wall Street Journal had an article there maybe a month or 2 ago, and it was talking about over a 22-year period adjusted for inflation, there was a 38% increase in spending in higher education. And I think, that's true on the averages, but I think one thing I want to be clear on is that's not been the story at the University of Missouri. Over that same period, we're just slightly above 2% above inflation, and we've grown our enrollment by 32%. So I think this chart is something we continue to look at as we plan. And so what it's really showing you is what is the state appropriations per degree and the net tuition per degree. So those are the outputs we're generating. And then when we adjust that we're showing what inflation does. And I think, this isn't to say we've rung the bell on this, that we're done. It really is saying we have to continue to do these things, and I think it's important. But I do want to highlight that I think the story at the University of Missouri is very different than what was presented in that article.
Ryan, on the state appropriations there, per degree, the way you have it broken down, that's just the state appropriations that go into our general revenue. That's not the capital.
Yeah, correct. That's our operating appropriation. I think I noted, and all of the targets are contained in your materials. We ended the year at 3.9% in terms of operating margin. And you might ask, why is an operating margin important when we don't need to pay a dividend or we don't have shareholders? Really, the margins that we're trying to set are saying, how do we set enough of a margin so we can deal with capital investments that we need to make, deferred maintenance. And so operating at break even isn't really where we need to be, so we try to calibrate that. I think it's also consistent with last year's performance. I know last year we were at 5.2%, but if you adjust that for the federal stimulus dollars, we actually came, I think, right in at this year's margin of 3.9%. The one thing I'd highlight, is the pension liability. It's large, it's volatile. We'll talk more about it in the spring as we do every year. I think the one thing to keep in mind is we have to measure our pension twice. We measure it at the end of the fiscal year, and really from an accounting perspective, what they ask us to do is you just take the total market value of the assets and whatever that pension liability is, and there's no actuarial smoothing that goes into it, and it says, okay, what is the percentage funding? And I think we're at about 77% funded, but if I went back to last year, we were at 80. I think in 2020, we were at 77%. What we really focus on is the actuarial valuation, and that's as of 10/1, and we'll go over that in the spring. But, you know, I think it's just one of those things that as the market moves, you know, it's going to be pretty responsive to good and bad years in the market. And so as you can see in 2021, we had a really good year. But I'm not overall, I think our plan on the pension continues to remain sound and look forward to reviewing that with the board this spring. The other thing is that we look at, one of our other metrics is cash to operations. You know, we're right in range of where we want to be in terms of target. I think one of the things to remember, and so cash, sometimes you hear us talk about reserves or spendable cash to investments. I'm using those terms interchangeably. That's really the reserves we have available. It's a risk management tool for us if we experience disruptions in operations. Our target's 1.0. The one thing to know is, though, our cash can be growing, and that's what we're seeing some pressure on, is we're seeing our cash is continuing to grow, but our operating expenses are growing at a slightly faster pace. And so any type of cash operations ratio, we're going to see some pressure on. So this, in the healthcare setting, days cash on hand is the term they use. This just gives you our operating margins by unit. You can see how we performed relative to the target and then where we came in on the consolidated basis. This is just another look of it. One thing about the operating margin is there's a lot of volatility. So you know, I shouldn't say a lot, but there is volatility to it. So we do tend to look at how are you doing in terms of the target over a 5-year period. And I think you can see, you know, across our universities on a consolidated level, we're doing well. MU Healthcare, I don't think it's necessarily unique to MU Healthcare. I think that's been in response to the last 2 years. It's been pretty challenging in the healthcare industry. So as far as our next steps, we are currently working with all 4 universities in MU Healthcare on developing the financial plans to bring before the board in February. I touched on we'll have a discussion most likely at the April meeting around our annual benefit report and the state of the pension. We'll provide an update on the budget. We set tuition typically in May or June, and then we bring the final budget for approval in June, and that would be for the FY25 budget. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, a couple quick questions. We've had really good years, both core funding and capital funding from the state. I don't expect that to continue. I guess my question is, do you think it'll continue? And if not, how do we manage that?
I think, you know, I agree with you. I don't think we can be sitting here and saying we're going to build financial plans into the future for our core operating appropriations. I'm not talking about capital or one-time investments. I think our expectation would be that, I don't know if it's going to go to zero, but it's not going to probably continue at the trend we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years. So as we think about our planning, a lot of it is saying, how do we kind of go back to a pre-pandemic set of assumptions as we think about that? And I think, you know, that's where we're going to have to look at. I always say for us to solve our challenges, we've got to think about where can we find other revenue sources, but we've also got to continue to say, back to that chart, how do we manage our costs? And also, one of the things that I think really helped us is that we have gotten after productivity. You know, when you look at the research numbers where they're at, without adding a lot of infrastructure and fixed costs to that, that helps us as well. So we definitely are in line with your expectation of not thinking there's going to continue to be the large increases that we've seen to the core over the last couple of years.
Ryan, obviously, inflation has compressed margins, but now that it's coming down and seems to be coming down, hopefully faster than people expect, do you envision, you know, getting those margins back, or is it going to be a little more complicated than that?
So I think our margins are going to probably trend, outside of healthcare, I think they're going to trend pretty closely to what they were historically. Our observation was it took inflation a while to set in. So you read about where it's at nationally. I didn't feel like we were experiencing it in the moment, and then it eventually showed up. And so I think our read of it would be that FY25 is where we'd start to see some of that cool. I think, but that's where we have to be mindful of not doing across the board type of increases, hiring, and being really thoughtful in how we continue to manage our money. But I think what we're continuing to focus on is how do we at least drive to those margin targets we've established.
Right, we talked a little bit about the hospital. What are the macro issues driving the healthcare industry?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot you can read on it, but like as I read the rating agency reports on the industry, and I listen to our own team and talk to others, labor cost is the primary driver, and then you couple that labor cost with capital investments. I think that's what's putting some of the pressure on not only margin but wealth.
Any other?
And on the medical front, the capital region, the bond defeasements and the investment or the expenses that we've had with that, are they shown within those figures yet? And where
They are.
did you put them on MU Healthcare? Or are they on the MU?
They will be on MU Healthcare on your FY24 reports. Cap region itself, though, has always been on the face of our financials. I'm trying to think about how I answer this without being confusing. They were considered a component unit while they weren't us accounting standards. Now, they're not in the targets you're seeing here. They will be for next year. But if you open up our actual financial report, it's in the footnotes, but not only is it in the footnotes, we have to put it on the face of the financials.
And then I believe we're going to account for those as a separate unit so we can see what their true improvement is as we go along.
Yes, that is correct.
Right.
One other thing, I just want to say that I think you refinanced a ton of debt over the last several years at really good rates. And I just want to say, I think you did a great job with that.
Well, thank you. We can't predict the future.
I'm speechless.
You should have gotten more.
I think, Bob, do you have one?
In hindsight.
Ryan, my question, you mentioned labor costs in the healthcare industry. Is that in a particular part of labor? Is it, you hear about nursing all the time.
I should have clarified. It's nursing cost that's driving it.
Okay, other questions? Right, if there are no other questions, Ryan, let's go ahead and move on to the financial aid report.
So there's a very detailed report included in your materials, and I'm happy to have conversations with anyone that's interested. I think when we think about aid, it becomes an even more important part of how we manage our enrollment. If we do it right, it can be used to recover lost enrollment. It can improve the quality of the class. And one of the goals we have when we think about aid is how do we stack that up, starting with federal aid first and state aid. And sometimes you hear me talk about institutional aid, but I'd break that out and say, then you've got your donor aid, and then really the last dollar in is we want to be the institutional aid. I'll go to the next chart here. I think the other thing is we continue to perform well on affordability. I don't think we have excessively high loan default rates, although they haven't been measured in a while, but we also don't have excessive loans compared to the national average. And I think if you look at some of the data we included in there, the trend is that the institutional aid continues to replace the number of loans that students are taking out. And some of that's been the shrinking of some of the federal loan programs. So if you look at this, this is in inflation-adjusted terms. It's from the College Board. There's a similar chart in there. Actually, this is not from the College Board. There's a similar chart nationally that you can compare us to included. This is how we look as a university. I'd say the trends look the same. The percentages are slightly different, but you can see that institutional aid for us and even nationally is becoming a more important part of the overall package. On this chart, I'm just using MU as an example and showing it in real dollars. And really showing the type of aid that's driving it. And it's, we have some need-based aid, but it's largely merit aid that is driving that. And I think that is really a function of competitiveness. We're in a very competitive place for these students. And one of the things we often talk about is kind of that iron triangle of how do you build a class. And so if you want a high quality class and you want to increase your net tuition and you want to grow your enrollment, just know those things, when I move one of those, it impacts the other. So if I say I want a really high quality class and I want to improve the net tuition per student, I'm probably looking at a smaller class size, all else being equal, as we think about that. You know, let's see. So as far as, I think I touched on this earlier, loans continue to decline while aid rises. This is a College Board chart. It's a national trend. I think we're consistent with what we're seeing as well. And I think it was in 16 and 17 as an institution where we, for the first time, the grant aid had exceeded the student loan, and that gap continues to grow.
I just want to clarify your footnote. Average per student is 2022 per year, or for their total degree? That's
the dollar amount that the chart's pegged to.
Okay.
This hasn't been measured in some time because of the deferment of student loans, but I think there were some other charts we included as well in the report that just showed, we continue to have students taking out fewer loans, and our students continue to pay those at a rate above the national average. I think some of the other things, as we think about aid, that we're seeing is what are some things we can do to continue to address affordability and access. And one of the things we learned is with the implementation of the differential tuition program and the plateaus, I think that's important. Also, participating in the College Transparency Initiative. And there's going to be some big changes coming out this year in regards to the FAFSA and how that works. And I'll be real quick. I think what that's probably going to mean is we're going to have more Pell-eligible students that qualify for the grant on our campuses. The other things we can do, as we've talked many times before, is retention rates and then time to graduation. And then one of the things when I touched on, when I break institutional aid out separately, I know all 4 of our universities are looking at how can we use technology to make sure we access those donor-funded scholarships before we award the institutional aid. And again, with the goal being that the last dollar we put in would be the institutional dollar. Any questions?
Is there any thought of trying to increase the merit aid at the state level?
Yeah, I think, so we included a chart there that showed how some states compare in terms of their merit programs and need-based programs. We certainly don't have control of it, but I think, if you look at Missouri's Bright Flight and you compare that to some other states, I think that's some discussions the president and the chancellors and others could start to have this year. Is there an opportunity to improve some of those merit-based programs at the state level?
And do we get a high percentage of those merit-based programs when the state does approve that?
We do.
Yeah. Okay, other questions? All right, if there are no other questions, we're going to move on to the action items. First action item that Ryan's going to present is a recommendation for the 2025 student housing and dining rates.
Thank you. So we set out some detailed materials, and really what we're trying to do is balance affordability with what is then driving, as we operate these housing and dining facilities. We want to operate them like a business operation, and they do need to sustain themselves. And the rates really are driven by what's the debt service, what's the building maintenance we need. Plus, we have some vendors and then just the inflationary pressure we feel. When I say debt service, I just want to highlight it's not at any one campus, but housing and dining is kind of the single largest holder of any of our external debt. It's about $350 million across the portfolio. This is just to give some context of what our rates have looked like for housing and dining compared to the national averages. And we don't have it for FY23 for the 2 checkered bars on there that's showing you the national average and inflation. And I think we'll still be below that national average, and I'm certain we'll be below for FY24. The other thing we did look at was just what were privately owned student housing what were the rates there, and I think they were up 8.6%, and I think running at about $1,800 a month. So, I think we continue to present competitive options that are slightly cheaper. And then the other thing we've been focused on is not only being competitive, but having a variety of options, because we have some students who want pretty Spartan options, and then we have some students who want some other higher end options as it comes to that. But this is just giving you a summary of the increases in what we call the predominant plan for each of the institutions. So it's the plans that most of our students enroll in, and as you can see, we're looking at an increase anywhere from 4.1% at Mizzou to a 3% increase at UMSL. Are there any questions?
Any questions? If there's no further discussion, may I have a motion from the committee and a second to approve the schedule of rates as outlined in the materials for the residence halls and family student housing on MU, UMKC, Missouri S&T, and UMSL campuses effective beginning with the 2024 summer session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, yeah, you're on the, I just had to remember
Yeah,
it's
I'm
on
on
the
your
committee.
committee, I
Yes,
think.
yes, you are. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor on the committee?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, Mr. Chair, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the schedule of rates as outlined in the materials before the members of the board for the residence halls and family student housing on the 4 campuses effective beginning with the 2024 summer session be approved.
Thank you, Curator Graves. A motion has been made to approve the fiscal year 2025 student housing and dining rates for the system as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. Curator Graves?
All right, 2 more action items. Next, Executive Vice President Rapp will present the recommendations for the veterinary medical expansion project.
Thank you. This project, I think we're all very excited about, and it'll be funded by a state appropriation through the Missouri Department of Agriculture. It's a $43 million project and really looks to build off of the Phase 1 VMDL project that's already underway. So it would envision us demolishing the existing 1970s facility and really accommodate the new addition that we have at Phase 1 that's under construction. It'll include space for VMDL's histopathology core, clinical pathology core, toxicology lab, and other support spaces. In addition, the project will develop new and renovated spaces to relieve some of the crowded conditions in the veterinary hospital clinic that's adjacent. And we currently have a study in progress to develop a plan to accomplish this goal and what the connection between VHC and VMDL would look like. But happy to answer any questions.
Questions? All right, I just have a quick comment. As a cattle producer in this state, I really appreciate the fact that the legislature and the governor and the university have reached out and pressed this forward for us. So if there's no further discussion, may I have a motion, a second from the committee to approve the veterinary medical expansion as outlined in the materials before the members of the board?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor on the committee signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I move to recommend to the full board the veterinary medical expansion project as outlined in the materials be approved.
Thank you, Curator Graves. A motion's been made to approve the project for veterinary medical expansion at MU. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. Are there any abstentions? The motion passes. Curator Graves?
All right, last action item, Executive Vice President Rapp and Mark Mangini, General Counsel, will present the recommendations for the scholarship fund amendments.
Yeah, Chairman Graves, I'll take this one. Ryan, if that's all right with you. So the ask today is that the board, the committee, and the board modify certain endowment and gift agreements to remove racial criteria from those agreements. When I say certain agreements, I'm talking about agreements that have 2 main elements. 1, those agreements that have racial criteria included in them, and 2, those agreements that also have what's called a human mind clause in the agreement. These are the agreements that fund scholarships. The human mind clause essentially says when the agreement is signed in the beginning, look, we can't predict what's going to happen with the law, but if there are changes in the law, the Board of Curators has the ability to amend this agreement to conform to the law. And so for those particular agreements that contain racial criteria and a human mind clause, we're asking the committee to approve the resolution proposed in the board pack to amend those appropriately. This is obviously in response to the Supreme Court's ruling this summer, which struck affirmative action. And as we've discussed in the past, those rulings that were overturned by the summer's opinion were the underpinnings of the support for racial criteria in our scholarships in the first place, not just according to us, but also according to the Office of Civil Rights, Department of Justice. So I'll stop there. Are there any questions?
Questions? Okay, if there's no further discussion, may I have a motion and a second from the committee to approve the scholarship fund amendments as outlined in the materials before the board?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the scholarship fund amendments as outlined in the materials before the board be approved.
Thank you, Curator Graves. A motion has been made to approve the amendment of the endowment or gift agreements with racial or ethnic award criteria or presence as presented. May I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please vote by saying no. Are there any abstentions? The motion has been passed. Curator Graves.
All right, that concludes the business of the Finance Committee, and I will note that we're 5 minutes ahead of time, and I think we were an hour behind when we started, so I'll give Ryan all the credit for that.
Good job, Mr. Chairman. Good job.
Kudos, Ryan.
I may not know who's on the committee, but I know what the clock says.
Well, Curator Graves, we'd like to thank you for valuing everyone's time, and all the presenters, thank you for doing a very thorough, fast job. We will now move on to our next item, and we will elect board officers for the next year. We'll take up the election by the board chair first. May I have a nomination for the Board of Curators Chair for 2024?
I have a nomination, Chair Williams.
Curator Blitz, you are recognized.
Yes. So it's my hope and hope that the will of the board is that Robin Winokur will be our next board chair. With that, I formally nominate her for such a position. If it's appropriate, new curator, should I say a few words as to my reasoning or not?
You are free to say as much or as little as you choose.
All right, I'm going to keep on Todd's schedule and not go too long. So, but Robin has a lot of qualities that qualify her for being the board chair. She has been a member of every committee of this board. She has chaired most of them. She's a former past president of the Missouri University Alumni Association. She's been honored by the university with the outstanding Graduate Award of the Decade. In her community, her membership on boards are prolific, and her honorariums to recognize that service are many. Throughout the state, Robin has served our citizens, and I'm particularly fond of the fact that she's received awards for children's mental health statewide and for our physically challenged citizens. Robin she's the managing partner of her family business. It's a large family business. It spans the state. And so I look at achievement when I look at somebody who wants to be a leader. And Robin, to me, checks all the boxes. She's achieved in higher education, her own community, to the less fortunate than other citizens of this state, and also in her own personal life. Today, we saw Daryl Chapman. I was not on the board when he was here, but he's obviously a great leader. I've had the privilege to work with Mike, who I also think is a great leader in the 8 months that I've known him. I think leadership is an interesting thing, and what it's not is a title. The title of chairperson doesn't make a leader. And management is not leadership. No leader takes something just to manage it and try and keep it in existence. But leadership is something that promotes progress. It's something that is creative, it's bold. We've used that a lot in this meeting today. It's thoughtful, and it's efficient. And if you go on and you think about leaders, it's kind of an innate thing. It's like a sixth sense. They see more than just what appears in front of them. They understand what's going on around them, and they understand what can occur, too. Leadership overall is one who fosters the positive of their organization and prevents any negative from happening. And I think in the tradition of Daryl and in the tradition of Mike, that Robin kind of checks all those boxes, and that's why I am proposing that she be our next chair. I think she will elevate every element of the University of Missouri system, all the healthcare, all the colleges, the nuclear reactor, the sports, the vastness of the Missouri system. She's well aware of it, as is the board, and I think she'll be very good for all of that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Curator Blitz. May I have a second?
Second. I think Jean.
I'll make a second. Part of the reason I joined the board was because of Robin, because I had a feeling that I could actually do something useful or cause problems.
Not that I don't take personal offense, because I thought you were coming to be with me, Jeannie. But anyway, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Are there any extensions? The motion passes. Now we move on to the nomination for the vice chair. May I have a motion, or may I have a nomination for the position of vice chair?
Mr. Chairman, it's my pleasure to put a nomination forward for Todd Graves. I was ordered to be brief.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. I believe Todd to be a good guy, a good family man, and he gives back to his community. He's at the top of his profession, respected locally, statewide, and internationally, and he's a great curator. He doesn't say much, but when he does speak, you probably want to listen. And I've been particularly impressed with his leadership in the Finance Committee. And Mr. Chairman, I believe Todd to be probably the only curator in the history of the state of Missouri who owns and flies his own helicopter. and maybe nationally, I don't know. And he assured me over lunch that anybody who votes for him will get a ride in his helicopter after this meeting.
Thank you, Curator Fly. And you all will get vouchers at the end of the meeting for your trip on Todd's helicopter. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to second the nomination of Todd. Now, I spoke with Todd, and when I agreed to second his nomination, and I'm proud to do it, I really didn't think I was going to have to follow, Mr. Blitz here and his so elegant recommendations. But Todd is, as Bob said, he doesn't speak a lot, but when he speaks, it's quite meaningful. I think he keeps his cards close to his vest. It might be some of his experience as being a federal prosecutor. He's well respected in the law and many activities that he's done with the University of Missouri. And so with that little said, and of course, he wants me to be short because we got to stay on time. I'm proud to second the nomination for Todd to be the vice chair.
This feels a lot like an obituary, but
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please vote by saying nay. Are there any abstentions?
I should abstain. What, you're always abstaining?
I've been here 3 years and I've abstained once.
The motion passes. Robin, will you join me at the podium?
Congratulations, both.
So here's the part when I realize I'm getting old, because I can't read this book without glasses.
I just cleaned mine.
Yeah. And so this is my opportunity to say, or to one, congratulate Curator Winterick on becoming the new chair. And it is tradition that we read a passage out of the book. And what I call it the book, but it is, each curator president signs it, but it's the book of history, and it's written, it covers from 1839 to 1939, so the first century of existence of the university. And everybody picks their own passage. For me, I can't see you guys until I put these down. But the passage I picked is the very last passage in the book. And the reason I picked it is because it's talking about the prosperity and the university of the future, and how you must have bold and transitional leadership as you go forward. And I think as we all sit around, we are enjoying one of those prosperous times. I think our relationship with our leadership has been fantastic. Our relationship with the legislature is fantastic. Our relationship, hopefully, with the staff and students have been fantastic. And so this paragraph hit me because after you talk about all the principles of the university, I'm just going to go ahead and read and stop blubbering. Our university today, as it enters upon its second century, in its history, stands as a significant symbol of progress in Missouri. And through the years, there's been built into it, into the very bricks and stones, into its traditions and spirits, the ideals of sacrifice and service in a noble and worthy cause. Generations of students, teachers, administrative officers, and curators have contributed their parts. So also have the alumni, the citizens, and the public officers of Missouri, who, while not directly connected with the day-by-day work of the university, nevertheless had a clear vision of the essential function of the university, a clear vision of the essential function the university performs in the total life of our state. Today we look back over 100 years of work well done. So well done, in fact, that the university entered into its second century secure in the affections of Missourians and in their appreciation of the increasingly useful service it can render and does render to Missouri. May the University of tomorrow, through building constantly upon the solid foundation laid in its past, continue to merit the confidence and the loyal support of the great state it serves. And it is with my great pleasure that I entrust this board to Robin, as I know that she is a great servant of this state, and that she will lead us in the direction that we need to go to make sure that all Missourians, all legislators, all students, all staff, and all faculty are very proud to be a part of this endeavor. Well, no, you got to get the book. You have to shake hands. Thank you. Let me get my glasses and stuff out of your way.
Well, and I have comments for you inside my remarks, but we do present this to you as a token and a symbol of the unbelievable service you've given to each of us and to our state this last year. So thank you. turn? Okay. Thank you to my colleagues for this honor and for placing your trust in me. Thank you, Curators Blitz and Singfield, for your nomination. I'd also like to thank Governor Parson for my appointment to the Board of Curators and his unwavering support for our state's land-grant university system, one of the state of Missouri's greatest assets. I'm truly honored to serve the students, faculty, and staff of each university in the great state of Missouri as your board chair. Our success as the state's leader in higher education is going to be based on continued interactions and dialogue with our system leaders. I want to thank them in advance for their support and their willingness to share their expertise. Our board is comprised of dedicated, lifelong Missourians who believe in public service. My fellow board members bring undeniable skills, intellect, integrity, and most of all, a deep love of our state. They're all leaders and willing partners in elevating Mizzou, UMSL, UMKC, Missouri S&T, our healthcare enterprises, and Extension. They're each passionate, protective, and loyal to this great system. In my 4 years as a curator, I've watched each of my fellow board members show the commitment and accountability that the people of Missouri deserve. Each of us gets this rare, wonderful opportunity to be in a position to elevate our state by developing its workforce, by engaging with our citizens in their communities on issues of healthcare and well-being, access to education and agriculture, and by championing and funding research that matters to not only Missourians, but nationwide and beyond. We all must embrace the fact that the board and our administration is accountable to the students, faculty, and staff, as well as to all Missourians. The future of this system is bright. In the last 60 days, we've had a groundbreaking at Mizzou and S&T, a facility unveiling at UMKC, and here at UMSL, they have opened a new patient care center. Each of our universities are increasing their enrollments and research dollars and are identifying projects at each campus that fulfill our mission of service. To paraphrase our Mizzou football coach Eli Drinkwitz, why stop now? Let's keep going. I am proud of where our universities are and even more proud of where we are headed. Sports are a visible way that our alumni and friends show their pride in our universities. Through their leadership, Mizzou coaches Drinkwitz, Gates, Smith, Anderson, and all of our coaches have built both nationally ranked teams and recruiting classes. All of our coaches across all of our campuses have reminded fans how exciting it is to be at Triton, a Tiger, a Rue, and a Minor. I want to especially thank Mike Williams, who is the ultimate team player for serving as chair, a true MVP who is willing to ask the hard questions but matches it with praise for a job well done. Mike is a champion for our students and for student life. I can't tell you how many times I've seen him at events at each of our universities, often off to the side, deep in conversation with the student, listening to their comments about their university experience. His dedication and loyalty to his fellow board members, coupled with his active engagement with the university system, is an example we should all follow. The success of the UM system starts and ends with everyone in this room. That is not something we can take lightly. We must continue to set high standards for how we do business as an organization, stay committed to the future of the system, and most importantly of all, never forget who we serve: the students, the faculty, the staff, and the citizens of Missouri. I am blessed and honored to serve this great institution. I am humbled by your support, allowing me to play a part in ensuring the success of the University of Missouri ensuring the success of the University of Missouri system for years to come. Thank you.
Are there any comments?
Well, first of all, on behalf of the administration, I want to thank you, Chair Williams, for your incredible leadership and service. And I want to congratulate Chair-elect Winokur, Vice Chair-elect Graves, and I know their deep commitment to serving the best interests of the University of Missouri system, and we look forward to supporting your initiatives going forward. So thank you.
Anyone else? Is there anything for the good and benefit of the order?
Why stop now?
It seemed like an easy thing to tie in, right? And appropriate.
Hearing nothing else. Cindy, do I have to take a motion to go back into executive session? Okay. We will adjourn, have a short press conference, and I will see everybody in executive session. And for the very last time,